Lords, I rise with great pleasure to follow the three noble baronesses who proposed this amendment. I think it was outside Yarlswood Detention Centre at a Set Her Free protest where I listened to some incredibly powerful, moving speeches from women who'd been detained in that centre and then came back to protest and spoke about what the experience was like and what they'd been through. And that showed huge bravery, and we talk a lot in Your Lordship's House now about trauma, and you could see and hear the trauma in those women's voices. But I see the noble lady, the Minister, isn't answering this question, but I don't necessarily expect her to remember this, but in June 2020, when I was still a very new member of Your Lordship's House, she was kind enough to have a one-on-one call with me after I had been with the South Yorkshire Migration, Asylum and Action Group to Urban House in Wakefield, where conditions were absolutely dreadful. And what we saw was CIMAG trying to pick up the pieces of the failure of government services to meet the most basic provisions, which is why I particularly wanted to rise to make a point in that actually so much of the provision that's covered by the Baroness's amendment is currently patchily, inadequately, but desperately, bravely and with huge effort being filled in by voluntary groups like CIMAG and many other groups like them around the country. They can't possibly do an adequate job, but they do an amazing job. And the point I would make to the noble Lord the Minister is those groups, if there were adequate government provision, could be doing so many other positive things to build communities to be actually an active growth force, not just trying to plug the gaps in the government. So there is a real cost, a long-term cost. If you actually could look at the financial cost of the lack of the provision that this amendment provides, the long-term cost is absolutely far greater than what the cost would be of providing care for people who are in our society, who are our responsibility.